Hello, how are we today? All righty. Our prayers go out to you, Miss Janet. I tell you what. Many of you may not have a clue who's speaking up here right now. Some of you do. I tell you what, it's an honor and a blessing for our television stations and our networks. I'm the Jim Bob character on TV for about 20 plus years, but I'm going to tell you a quick story that I've told Miss Judith just lightly just a little bit ago. That's probably about a 5 or 6 year old, 50 some odd years ago. I attended a fun event over here at Huntington High School, and got to see Mr. Jerry Lee Lewis do some great fundraising for one of our schools here in our area. And as I've grown up in this area, being a Natchez-ian, a Vidalian, a Ferridayan, life has come full circle for me. I've been able to be on TV for about 20 plus years, and now we own a couple of TV stations and radio stations. And I think I told you, Miss Judith, that on Friday, for my morning show, the Morning Gumbo Show on 104.7 and 107.1, we played not only Great Balls of Fire, but a whole lot of shaking going on and some more good stuff. But before we get started, I want to read some great words here that may touch many of you that weren't maybe able to go to the visitation or to the funeral. But before I read those words, I want to let you know that MidSouth.tv is where we broadcast live this morning, the visitation and the funeral. And we're going to be filming this, and at some point in time, when it all gets all polished up, we're going to release it. We'll make sure we get copies for the family, and so that the world of fans, friends, and family can enjoy this celebration of life here at the Ferriday Arcade Theater. So let me take a few moments of your time, if you would. Somewhere in the world, in a mean little honky-tonk, or big music hall, or church basement, rec room, someone is playing a Jerry Lee Lewis song. Wherever there's a piano, someone is shouting. You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. Too much love drives a man insane. But they won't play it like the killer, Lewis liked to say, as if he needed to make sure the whole world was hearing him right, hearing the pounding genius of it in songs like Whole Lot of Shaking Going On, Breathless, Great Balls of Fire, cause, like he liked to say, ain't but one of me. You broke my will, but what a thrill. Lewis, perhaps the last true great icon of the birth of rock and roll, whose marriage of blues, gospel, country, honky-tonk, and raw, pounding stage performances so threatened a young Elvis Presley that it made him cry, has died. He was there at the beginning with Elvis, Johnny Cash, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Carl Perkins, Fat Domino, Buddy Holly, and the rest, and watched them fade away one by one till it was him alone to bear witness and sing of the birth of rock and roll. Who would have thought, he said, near the end of his days, it would be me. Goodness gracious, Great Balls of Fire. He suffered through the last years of his life from various illnesses and injuries that his physicians have often said should have taken him decades ago. He had abused his body so thoroughly as a young man, he was given little chance of lasting through middle age, let alone old age. He is ready to leave, his wife Judith said, just before his death. Lewis, who performed everything from Over the Rainbow to Al Jolson, who played the Opry and the Apollo and even Shakespeare, was 87 years old. Some music historians have wondered if Lewis, regarded by his fans and many music historians as rock's first great wild man, might be indestructible. His obituary has been written, rewritten, then shelved, gathering dust for a day that seemed inevitable, but seemed to never come. He defied death in his old age, just as he shrugged off the hard-driving, self-destructive lifestyle of his younger years to play his music to a worldwide audience across 7 decades, decorate the walls of his home with Grammys and gold records, and spawn a million outrageous stories, most of them true. Once when asked by a biographer, is it true that, yeah, interrupted Lewis, without waiting to hear the particulars, it probably was. His beginnings sounded like myth. His father, Elmo, and mother, Mamie, mortgaged their farm to buy him a piano. After he climbed onto a piano bench and without ever having touched a keyboard before, began to play. His nickname, Killer, had nothing to do with his playing, but came from a schoolroom fight in Ferriday, right here where you're all at, when he tried to choke a grown man with his own necktie. Still, it fit the man, the musician to come. But there was more to him than a barroom piano pounder who sometimes kept a pistol in his pants. Musicians and music journalists called him a true virtuoso, whose music was so rich and complex that some of them swore that there were two pianos on stage instead of one. He played honky-tonk and blues across the same keyboard in the same instant, could play melody with both hands. He sang rockabilly before he knew it had a name, sang blues, gospel, and country in the same set and sometimes the same breath. To become number 24 on Rolling Stone's 100 Greatest Artists of All Times, Sam Phillips, who launched the careers of Ellis and Lewis at Sun Records in Memphis, called Lewis the most talented person he had ever seen, a talent that made him one of the very few to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's first class in 1986, and most recently this past week, at long last, into the Country Music Hall of Fame. As Lewis stacked hits on the charts in '57, and Elvis received his first draft notice, the reigning king of rock and roll drove to Sun Record in tears to tell Lewis, "You can have it." But if Jerry Lee's life was a comet that streaked across the sky of American music, it was also a thing that scorched him inside and out. And so many of the people around him, Judith, his seventh wife, was by his side when he passed away at his home in DeSoto County, Mississippi, south of Memphis. He told her in his final days that he welcomed the hereafter and that he was not afraid. Born into the Assembly of God church in his hometown of Ferriday, Louisiana, he never stopped believing. Even when his lifestyle made the specter of hell seem closer, his greatest fear that he would be condemned to a lake of fire for playing what many in his Pentecostal faith called the devil's music haunted him. He shared his fear with Elvis, who begged him to never mention it again. Lewis thought Elvis, also a Pentecostal, was the one person who might understand. But he died in '77, leaving Lewis to wander alone. He had prayed every day across his long life for forgiveness and for salvation. His was a church that believed in miracles. Why, he sometimes wondered, should he not be the one of them? He found peace near the end of his life in a simple idea, that a music that brought such joy to so many could only come from God. And the devil, he said, didn't have nothing to do with it. He said he was ready to be with Jesus, said Judith. His last album was a gospel record with his cousin, lifetime televangelist Jimmy Swaggart, who had preached against his music when they were younger. In Jerry Lee's final months, they took turns at the keyboard, singing songs that they learned as children. The Old Rugged Cross, and Lily of the Valley, and In the Garden. Lewis, though his voice and body were weakened by his injury and a recent stroke, seemed happy, content. Much of his life, Lewis had seemed determined to leave the world in a great fire he sang about. He set pianos ablaze, busted hecklers in the head with a butt end of his microphone stand, and rammed the great gates of Graceland with his Rolls Royce. He shot holes in the wall of a Memphis office with a .38 revolver, shot his bass player in the chest by accident with a .357. His life at different times was a blur of high-speed chases and Crown Royal. The DEA met his planes on the runway. Fortunes came and went, all the wild rock musicians who came after him, he said, were mostly amateurs. Keith Richards tried to toss up a bottle of Crown Royal and catch it by the neck like him, but he never did it right. Wasted a bunch of time, wasted a bunch of good liquor. But if you ask him in his waning years what he hoped people would say about him, he had a simple answer. You can tell him I played the piano and sang rock and roll. His career, like his body, seemed doomed that a dozen times. After soaring to the top of the charts in '57 with songs like Shakin' and High School Confidential, he was castigated in the press for his marriage to his 13-year-old cousin, Myra. His rock and roll star seemed to burn out even as it began to rise, and after a few big hits in the early '60s, his career seemed to be over. He responded by loading 2 cars with instruments and musicians and hitting the road to play some big rooms. Still, but also every honky-tonk and beer joint that would pay him to perform. He fought his way out of beer joints in Iowa, then drove all night and all day to play another town and another show. Sometimes he gave them magic, and sometimes, if the mood was on him, he gave them less. But in his old age, he swore he gave them the magic all the time. In '64, record producers taped his show at a Hamburg, Germany nightclub and made what would become music history. Live at the Star Club would be regarded as one of the rawest, wildest, and greatest live albums of all time. Then, in a twist that surprised many of his rock fans, Jerry Lee Lewis went country. Another Place, Another Time was just the beginning of a string of soulful country chart toppers that made him rich and famous all over again. He had more than 30 songs reach Billboard's top 10, including To Make Love Sweeter for You and a haunting Would You Take Another Chance on Me. It seemed only natural to Jerry Lee. He had always believed that Hank Williams hung the moon. In this new stardom, he finally played the Grand Ole Opry, the organization that had once snubbed him and ignored the 2-song protocol to play what and for as long as he pleased, even playing through the commercials. Then, in perhaps the oddest twist of his musical career, he was cast as Shakespeare's sinister Iago in a musical production in Los Angeles. He was a natural. Once again, he flew around the world, sometimes on his own plane, and once again, his lifestyle made almost as many headlines as his music. Tragedy followed him. He buried 2 sons. His health began to fail. Marriages failed. But sometimes he always rallied, always kept playing for big paydays or for free in a Memphis nightclub, living the life he sang about in his songs. In 2006, his Last Man Standing album sold 1 million copies, his best-selling album of his long career. He followed that with another success, Mean Old Man. You could hear the ghost of the old honky-tonks in them, as if Jerry Lee Lewis had truly found a way to stop time. He did a duet with Springsteen. His Lifetime Achievement Grammy was a kind of crowning achievement, and he appeared at Rock and Roll Hall of Fame shows to accept his due and to school the whippersnappers on how it was done. In 2012, when he was 76, he fell in love and married Judith. And they lived quietly for Jerry Lee Lewis in northern Mississippi. Though Lewis continued to do shows here in the U.S. and abroad, that year they took a trip to Ferriday to visit the family cemetery and to drive across the bridge to Natchez, where, as a boy, Jerry Lee used to dangle over the gritters high above the brown water of the Mississippi and the passing boats below. The other boys begged him to get down, but he just hung there, grinning, till they were in tears. When asked if he was scared a lifetime later, he just looked surprised. The killer didn't get scared, but looking down at the river as an old man, he said he might have been crazy. Later, they drove past the church where he beat the piano to pieces with his cousins, Swaggart and Mickey Gilley, who would go on to country music stardom, pounding a little blues and honky-tonk into the hymns they were supposed to be practicing. Just across town from the tiny church had once stood the other temple of his musical education, a blues joint called Haney's Big House, where some of the biggest acts in the country came to play. As a little boy, he snuck in the door and hid under the tables to hear rolling blues piano and wicked guitar. And somewhere in between it all, between the hymnals and the beer joints, between Hank Williams and Ray Charles, he found something that was his. It was always a waste of breath to ask if he had any regrets. He had a million, and he had none. It all just depended on the song that was running through his head at the time. I've had an interesting life, he said in his 2014 biography, haven't I? Written by Rick Bragg. Jerry Lee Lewis is survived by his wife, Judith Coghlan Lewis, his children, Jerry Lee Lewis III, Ronnie Lewis, Phoebe Lewis, and Lori Lancaster, sister Linda Gale Lewis, cousin Jimmy Swaggart, and many grandchildren, nieces and nephews. He was preceded in death by his parents Elmo and Mamie Lewis, sons Steve Allen Lewis and Jerry Lee Lewis Jr., his siblings Elmo Lewis Jr. and Frankie Jean Lewis, and his cousin Mickey Gilley. Rest in peace, Jerry Lee Lewis. And they all said, amen. Next, we would like to invite a few of Jerry Lee Lewis's international friends that have traveled afar. Many have maybe come across the pond and flown in big airplanes to come over here and give their last respects and words to him. Is there a Jared Freiberg in the room? Jared, would you like to come on up and give a few words for us? Walk through the door there, sir. Come on around and we'll open the curtain for you.
Thank you very much. I think words can't really express just how significant this man was, not only as a musician and a singer, but a man. And I think maybe the best way to explain how important he was to me would be how I discovered Jerry Lee Lewis. I took piano lessons since I was a little kid. I was about 6 years old, and did it the usual way where you take classical lessons, and there's only one way to take piano, and a lot of people quit after a couple of weeks. I kind of wanted to do the same thing. And I was in a middle school classroom, and my choir teacher handed out a piece of music for everybody to warm up on our voices. And this particular day, it was Great Balls of Fire. And we all kind of giggled, you know. We thought, oh, this is an interesting song. None of us had heard it before, and we sang it. But the song was cool, but what caught my attention was the way that my teacher was playing piano, accompaniment-wise, that boogie-woogie style. And I came up to her after class, I'm 12 years old, and I said, what are you doing? What is that? I've never heard a piano played like that. And she says, she wrote it down on a Post-it note. She wrote down Jerry Lee Lewis. She sent that home with me. She says, now you get on YouTube, right, and you search this man. I think you're going to come back tomorrow very excited. And that was my first introduction to the man, getting to see him play a whole lot of shaking on the Steve Allen show back in 1957, I guess it was. And it was just my whole idea of what a piano player and an entertainer, and everything just changed in that moment. I said, I want to keep playing piano. You know, it was because of him. There was nobody else. I had stopped taking lessons. I completely wanted to give it up. So it wasn't about a year after that that the first time I actually performed for anybody live was Great Balls of Fire for all my middle school friends, and they thought I was crazy. Kicking back the stool and playing, with my feet and everything like that. I mean, he was so inspirational. And it was a few years later, after becoming friends with another great friend of Jerry Lee, Mr. Graham Knight, who I'm sure you'll hear from shortly, who gave me a lot of encouragement and helped me to get to meet Jerry Lee 3, Lee, of course Judith, our good friend Jacob Tolliver, and Eric Williams, that I saw Jerry play at Viva Las Vegas in 2018. And that was an experience. To see him live was incredible. And he was playing just as well as he did back in 1957. The same licks and the same everything. It was amazing. And I thought to myself that would be totally enough, even just to see him live. But I think a testament to just how great of a man he was, beyond how much of a legendary talent that he was that he was so kind. And when I did get a chance to meet him, he didn't just say, "Oh, thank you very much," and moved on. He looked me in the eyes and he said, "Thank you." He understood, what I did for a living and everything. And he said, "Thank you for keeping the rock and roll going." And the second time I got to see him in Memphis on Beale Street at the Jerry Lee Cafe, I came back and sat with him for a bit, and then had to get ushered out at the moment. He says, "Well, just come back after a little while." He was so accommodating and so generous and so warm, and he would always give the time of day to his fans. And it seems that was the case over his entire career, even just a couple of years ago, to give me a couple extra minutes of his time. And it meant a lot, because even if I could have had that, his impact on me as a piano player and musician was huge. But I think his impact on me as a human being that teaches people how to love unconditionally, I think that will never be understated. So that's all I can say, and I don't think I have any other words that can explain very well just how amazing he is. You all understand how great Jerry Lee Lewis was, so rest in peace, and God be with you, Jerry. We miss you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Great words there from a great man. Aiden Hart. Is there Aiden Hart? Come on up here, sir. I did find out a little bit earlier that I believe Chicago is not international, but it's national to us. So I got family right outside of Chicago.
Okay, so I just found out I was doing this, so I'm gonna keep it brief. I have a few notes. I had the pleasure of meeting Jerry a couple of times, and he was nothing but great. He was nice, very, very kind to his fans. And the reason I'm here, traveled from Chicago today with some friends, is I owe my career and my future to Jerry. I first saw Jerry live in about 2016, I'll say. And from that point on, I knew I wanted to work with talent. And here I am now, 6 years later, and I'm managing 2 artists. And it's been great, all thanks to him. Also, rigorously studied piano for about a decade, and now I'm a piano teacher. much like Jerry, classical, but because I'm a teacher now, I can indoctrinate children with Jerry's great style of playing. So his legacy will live on to the new generation of piano players. Thank you, Judith, so much for including us. I'm sorry, everyone here, for your loss. This is a great loss to music. Sorry I'm not as prepared as I should have been. I just found out, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Aiden, for those great words. Graham Knight. Mr. Graham.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you can hear from my voice, I am here from Scotland, and I have come from Scotland yesterday and go back home tomorrow. So obviously, this is a rush trip. I have known Jerry for 60 years, since 1962. And my friend Terry Adams from London, who cannot be here, and myself have driven Jerry all over Europe, and we've had great fun. I can't begin to tell you all the things that happened, or we would all be going to jail. I should just say that I noticed that when the coffin was placed at the cemetery, it gave a little sort of tremble and shake, and I thought, oh no, Jerry's going to do 90 minutes. But there you go. I've known him for 60 years, so I could tell you a million stories. But let me try and think. I have known so many wives and so many girlfriends, it's incredible. I've known all the band members, a lot who are not with us anymore, or a lot who cannot be here today. But when I think of some of the band members that were so good, but we do have a representative of the band, and Kenneth here. Kenneth, put your hand up and just say hello. Met Kenneth in 1967, 68, and that's the time that Jerry had been persuaded to play Shakespeare. He played Iago in a rock and roll version of Othello. It seems strange to think of Jerry doing Shakespeare, but he did. And Kenneth there had an amazing outfit. He was in tights, Elizabethan tights. If I move on a bit from those days, I should also remember that I had great fun in London with Jerry's son, Junior. I showed him how to use the London Underground, and one day it was while Jerry was recording the session, Junior didn't come to the studio that day, and we wondered where he was. And he was going round and round in London on the Underground, visiting all the famous places. And Junior was a great guy, and his brother is right here, Ronnie. Put your hand up, Ronnie, come on. And Ronnie, of course, is one of Jerry's son from, you were born in 1956, is that right? Yeah. And your mum was Jane. That's a long time ago. And I've known, you know, Junior was a great guy, but we also remember Stevie, whose funeral, we saw his gravestone today. And I remember Sean and some of the other people who are no longer with us. But I was trying to think of a good, funny story to tell you to finish with. But Jerry was such an influence on my life. You can imagine when I was 19, Jerry was 26. And I won't be offending anyone because Myra isn't here. But Jerry always said, I'm a bachelor as soon as I leave Memphis. He was the greatest of them all. There is absolutely no doubt about that. The greatest of them all, and acknowledged as the greatest of them all from all his peers in the music business. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Is there a Russell Merrick in the room? How about Evan Tabler? Evan Tabler?
Thank you, Judith, for that opportunity. Thank you.
Good morning. So I was expecting to do this just like Aiden, so I'll be a little nervous up here. But I first thank the Lewis family for having me out here. Jerry meant a lot to me. We've got some notes I'm going to go over. Just want to thank you guys for allowing me to speak at such an important event, honoring Jerry Lewis. He meant a lot to me and the way I view music as a whole. Jerry Lewis had a great impact on my life. From just discovering him, it changed my whole perception on music. Jerry's a big part of why I got into music. I started learning to play the piano, play guitar. He's had a massive impact on my life. I apologize for being so nervous to getting up here, but I don't have a stage presence like Jerry. Nobody ever will. I just want to say, long live the killer, and thank you for having me.
Is there a Daniel White? Daniel White? Come on, Daniel.
You'll have to excuse me all because I didn't know I was doing this either, but because it's for Jerry, I'll do anything for Jerry. So, yeah, I think when it comes to people's talent, I'm not somebody who usually likes to say somebody's better than someone. I think everybody's great, but when it comes to Jerry, I'm biased. It's the only thing I'm ever biased in. You know, when people say he's one of the best, he's not. He's the best. It's just as simple as that. He's the greatest talent that's ever been in any kind of anything, in my opinion. So, I first met Jerry when I was 16 years old in Bristol, England. I remember I was waiting outside the back door of a venue, and Jerry walked past, and I grabbed his hand. And I didn't let go, and he kind of pulled me with it. And he just smiled and laughed at me. I don't know, for so many people, Jerry's music, he means so much to them. And I'm the same, but for me, it's on a much more personal level. And the man Jerry was, that's what means, has meant so much to me. Yeah, when I was a teenager, I suffered like a trauma that lasted a good few years. And when I was 17, I was in a very, very bad place where I was very, very lost. I couldn't even talk, literally. I was very depressed, and I was just in a very, very bad way. And when I think of the power of Jerry and just him and him alone, thinking like I was a 17-year-old from Birmingham and he was somebody who just lived here. He was the one and only person who brought me out of it. And as I say, I'd met Jerry once, but I didn't know Jerry on a personal level, and that's just the power Jerry has had all over the world, through so many people who have got so many stories, and some that he won't have known. But Jerry gave me a life and a purpose, and he's been an incredible inspiration. All these things I'm saying I can't really express just on the level that it is. I lost a lot of friends during that time as well because of what I was going through, and one of the things I'm so appreciative is of the friends I've met through Jerry, and I've got to know Jerry and his family over the years, and I've got to know Jerry quite well himself as well. The most fun I've ever had in my whole life has been with Jerry. The coolest moments I've ever had have been with him. I don't think they'll ever be topped. I've had girlfriends from not far from here because of Jerry. Yeah, I could go so on and on, so many things like that. But when I look at everybody here, Jerry has given me a family, something that I'm really appreciative for. You know, some people I haven't met here, but I feel a connection with everybody here because everybody loved him the same as way I do. And that's the power of Jerry. He was an absolute superstar, like at the highest, the high. Yeah, and I think that's the main thing I've got from Jerry, and yeah, I've spent so many good time with him. Like when my mum passed away, and he comforted me and things like that, and he was always singing everywhere, always singing, which I love. I've been able to help out at so many shows behind the scenes for him, and I've got to know his family so well, who've become from my family, and friends who will be family for life. And I just want to say sorry, you know, like Aidan said, for everybody's loss, because I know we're all feeling the same thing. And the only real comfort is that I know Jerry was at peace, and he's with the good Lord, which does give me comfort, and that is the main thing. He is in paradise, so that does give me comfort as much as I'm missing him, and as much as we're sad. That is the only thing that gives me comfort. If I'm a friend of yours in these next few weeks, as I have been, please just let me know if you need me, because I understand how people feel and I want to be there for everyone as well. But yeah, I just want to say the killer will always rock on and on. It's impossible for his spirit to die, and it's when you love someone, it's impossible for them to leave you. He's here right now, so yeah, I just love you all. Thank you.
Darren White. Darren? Come on up here, sir.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. That guy you just seen up there was my son Daniel. Now, as you're well aware, we're from England, and my story is I used to be a 50s rock and roll DJ in England, and when he decided to give up doing the DJing, I thought I'd love to go and start following somebody, some star for 50s rock and roll. And I started to follow Jerry all over the world. The story with me and Daniel, when Daniel was 10 years old, I was going to see Jerry in a show in Europe. And the show was at Wembley in England. And it was such a special show because we managed to get seats right down the front. Right down the front. I think it was the third row back. And what was so cool about that show was having a 10-year-old sitting by me, and he knew every lyric to every Jerry Lee Lewis song that Jerry Lee Lewis played that night. And all the fans around weren't watching Jerry, was watching Daniel singing all these lyrics. And then Jerry started looking at Daniel, and he quickly realised that this 10-year-old knew every lyric to every song that was singing. It was fantastic. And as the years went on, we followed Jerry, as I said, all over the world. But when I stopped travelling with St. Jerry to build my family, Daniel carried on doing it. Daniel carried on following him everywhere, all over the world. It was fantastic. And he used to come back and he used to tell me so much stories, so many great stories about Jerry and Jerry's family. But you know, being a lover of 50s rock and roll music, you know, everybody's got their favourite. And at some point, you will decide, if you love rock and roll music or blues music or country and western, you always get a favourite of your own. And being a DJ, obviously I used to play 50s rock and roll with loads of artists, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino. But it was when I watched the Steve Allen show with Jerry, when he played a whole lot of shaking, and it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Fats didn't do that. Little Richard didn't do that. Chuck Berry didn't do that. Jerry Lee Lewis done that. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And that's what done it for me. And, you know, we started following him. I listened to all his recordings. And to be here today, to one of my heroes, and to watch my son just say them few words up there, such meaningful words, I'm so grateful. I'm so honoured. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please forgive, because I would not be here today. I would not be doing what I'm doing without him. And words cannot express how much he meant to me. And to be from the same area, Natchez, Ferriday, Ferriday, so much talent has come out of this area. It's ridiculous. And I am proud to say that I am part of that. And I have been going around playing places. Matter of fact, I've got a show this evening north of Jackson. And I have been playing places the past, I guess, say 6 months maybe. And I started playing the piano not thinking it would take me anywhere, but I was wrong. And I thank God for this talent that He has given me, and I am really going to use it. And as a matter of fact, I never knew Jerry personally. I never met him, never been to one of his shows. But I've always sat back and I've seen on Facebook, YouTube, everything, on TV, all of his performances. And I remember the first time that I saw the Steve Allen show performance, July 28th, 1957. And I was blown away. I got my first piano when I was 8 years old. I started playing. I picked up a boogie woogie sort of beat. I heard it on TV or something. And my dad took me to Mr. Eastland right down the road, Eastland's Music. And I played something for him. He was in the mood. Like doing the boogie woogie version, in the mood. And Mr. Eastland looked at my dad and he said, Todd, which is my dad, he said, Todd, he got something. You know who he sounds like? He sounds like Jerry Lee Lewis. And I didn't know who he was. Mr. Easton said, "Do you know who Jerry Lee Lewis is?" I said, "No." I said, I've never heard of him." So one day on the way back from school, about a year or two later, and I never bothered looking him up, you know, because I was a little bitty at the time. I didn't know any better. On the way back from school, I heard Great Balls of Fire on the radio. It may have been 107.1 River. I don't know if it was or not. But my dad said within an hour, and I don't really remember very much, but all I know is within an hour when I got home, I was playing Great Balls of Fire on the piano. That's where it all started. And it would have not been possible. I would not be where I am at today. I would not be talking to all of y'all in here, nervous as I don't know what, if it wasn't for Mr. Jerry Lee Lewis. And not too long ago, I know Judge David Bramlett across the river in Natchez got a hold of Mr. Tim Vance. And he got a hold of Miss Judith and Jerry Lee, and he signed a little autograph and a little keychain and bag and sent that to me. And I never would have thought in my wildest dreams. And I really sincerely appreciate that coming from y'all. And I've got it hanging on the wall, and I will cherish it for the rest of my life. I will pass it on to my kids, their kids, but I would just like to say how much of an honor it is to be speaking of it. You know, Ms. Kimball put me on the spot. I'm not good with words, but I think I did okay. I really appreciate that.
Good stuff, kid. Give me a handshake. Miss Judith, if you would like, would you like to say a few words? Or, all righty.
First of all, I just wanted to thank all of y'all for coming and what Ferriday meant to my husband. And to tell you that he loved this town till the day he passed. And when he would talk about what he wanted, he loved Mississippi, loved Tennessee, but he loved Ferriday. And I personally, we have a gathering in Hernando, Mississippi, which is what he wanted, just a wake, they call it. And I stood in line and sat near his coffin for 2,000 fans. Never got tired, because Jerry Lee Lewis, as much as he loved his family, he loved his fans with a love that you just could never imagine. His famous line was, "I love you, I need you, I couldn't do it without you." And that's what he meant. And I just wanted all of y'all to know that Natchez and Ferriday, he loved it. He played in Natchez down at I don't even remember what they called it, but in a little band when he was 15, and he could play every instrument. And his drummer didn't show up. So he played the drums with his left hand and the piano with his right hand. We met years ago, and we grew up the same way. We had the same kind of upbringing, same kind of mom and daddy, the daddy that traveled all over different schools and all of that kind of stuff. And we would talk for hours and hours into the night. And the main thing that touches me the most is what his fans meant to him. He never forgot his fans, and he would talk to them and help them in any way he could, financially, whatever. And I did want to speak about the love of his family. He was a great husband to me. He was a great father. And he was a great brother. And the love that he had for his family was the same kind of love he had for his fans. His fans, like Graham Nye, that met him. Graham came to his house. I could tell you dozens of people that he would just invite and help their lives. And Daniel White is one of those that stayed in touch. Jerry stayed in touch with him all of his life. And I feel very, very blessed just extremely blessed that I got to spend nearly 13 years with him. And I asked him one day, I said, well, you have so many wives, you know, why did you marry so many times? He said, well, I wanted to give them a chance to marry Jerry Lee Lewis. That is a very true story. Very true. He said, I didn't ever know I'd find the right woman. He said, I had to do that to find the right woman. So I could go on and on and on about everything, but I wanted to thank the city of Ferriday, and he just loves it, and we love all of y'all, and y'all just don't forget me because I loved him more than you could ever love anybody. Thank you.
God bless you, Miss Judith. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm not putting her on the spot. Okay. There. Thank you for reaching out on behalf of the family and all of the family, from all of us that I'll guarantee you this, that the radio stations that me and my family own, 104.7 The Gator, here in Ferriday, Natchez, and Vidalia, will always and continue as long as I own those stations. And there was a great man before us. I've been trying to get those radio stations in my hands for about 20 years. Now that me and my wife solely own, I'll promise everybody in this room, 104.7 FM The Gator will play a whole bunch of Killis music on it. All right? I'm going to give you one more. The Jim Bob Redneck Adventures TV show, and American Ramblers, and the Morning Gumbo Show on 107.1 FM The River. You're going to hear a lot of that on there, Mr. Clyde Ray. I want you to come in soon, and let's tell that story about that great football team that marched all the way down there, almost to the goal line, and they punted on third down. That motivated me way back in the day, by the way. They never let me kick that ball. All righty. God bless. Without Miss Judith, we want just everybody to mill around and visit for a little while. Have we got a little bit more food left over there?
Sure, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it.
All righty. Hey, thank y'all all for coming, and God bless and rest in peace, Jerry Lee Lewis the Killer.
Well, let's figure out how we can turn this thing off. That's great. Okay. It's better. It's better. Do you play these things very much? I never
I
played
hate
them.
them. I hate them. It's so terrible.
I've never played one. You know, we got them several in church.
But you remember the first gospel song you learned on piano, singing and playing?
It would have been Old Rugged Cross, probably.
Really?
You know.